Scary telling.
I woke up with a pounding headache and a cord tied around my neck. The ceiling fan was broken, and I was lying on the floor. I remembered what had happened. I had tried to kill myself because of my depression and my wife's infidelity. But then I saw a man in a suit standing in front of me. He introduced himself as a messenger of the devil and showed me a vision of what my life could have been. In the vision, I was happy. My wife and children were by my side, and I had a successful career. I wasn't consumed by depression and despair. It was like a light had been switched on inside me. I felt hope for the first time in a long time. But as the vision ended, the man told me that it was all a lie. He said that he was showing me what my life could have been if I had chosen to live, but it was too late now. I was doomed to suffer in hell for all eternity. I was terrified. I had never believed in the devil or hell, but now I was facing the consequences of my actions. I asked the man if there was any way out, but he just laughed and disappeared. I was left alone with my thoughts, wondering what I could do to escape this fate. I thought about my family and the pain that my death would cause them. I realized that I didn't want to leave them behind, even if it meant facing eternal damnation. I picked myself up off the floor and stumbled downstairs to the kitchen. My wife was there, making breakfast. I kissed her like I hadn't in years, feeling a rush of love and affection for her. She was surprised by my sudden change of heart, but I didn't care. I was determined to make things right. I went outside and found my children playing in the yard. I hugged them so tight that they gasped for air, feeling a sense of joy and happiness that I hadn't felt in years. I knew that I had to find a way to pay off my debts and make things right with my family. But as I went about my day, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The man in the suit had shown me a vision, but it was just a trick. I was still in danger, and I didn't know how to escape. As the day wore on, my anxiety grew. I couldn't focus on anything else. I was consumed by fear and uncertainty. But I knew that I had to keep going. I had to find a way to make things right, even if it meant facing the devil himself. I knew I had to make things right with my family and pay off my debts, but the more I thought about it, the more my anxiety grew. I was in way over my head, and I didn't know what to do. I went back to my old habits. I started drinking again and spending all my time at the casino, hoping to hit the jackpot and pay off my debts. But things only got worse. I started losing more money than I could afford, and the loan shark I owed money to was breathing down my neck. My wife started to notice the change in me. She knew that something was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth. I felt trapped, like I was drowning in a sea of debt and misery. One night, I came home to find my wife in bed with another man. I was enraged. I had suspected her of cheating before, but this was too much to bear. I stormed out of the house and drove to the loan shark's office. I told him that I needed more time to pay off my debts, but he just laughed in my face. He said that he was going to take everything I had, my house, my car, even my children. I felt helpless and alone. That's when the man in the suit appeared again. He told me that he could help me, but I had to do something for him first. He wanted me to kill the loan shark and my wife's lover. I didn't want to do it, but I felt like I had no other choice. I went back to my house, feeling like a different person. I was consumed by rage and hate, and I knew what I had to do. I found the loan shark in a dark alley and stabbed him in the neck. He didn't even have time to scream before he died. Then I went back to my house and found my wife's lover in our bed. I plunged the knife into his chest over and over again until he stopped moving. I was covered in blood and shaking with adrenaline. I knew that I had gone too far, but I couldn't stop myself. I felt like a monster. But the man in the suit was waiting for me. He laughed and told me that he had been manipulating me all along. He said that he wasn't the devil, but something far worse. And now, I was his pawn. I didn't know what to do. I was in too deep. I had killed 2 people, and I couldn't go back. The man in the suit told me that he would help me pay off my debts, but I had to do whatever he said. I felt like I had no other choice. And that's how I became a pawn in the devil's game. I was trapped, and I didn't know how to escape. I was trapped in a game that I couldn't win. The man in the suit had promised to help me pay off my debts, but he wanted me to do more and more terrible things. I felt like I was losing myself, like I was becoming someone else entirely. He made me steal, hurt people, and do unspeakable things. Every time I tried to back out, he threatened to turn me over to the police or harm my family. I felt like I had no other choice but to go along with it. But things got worse. He started to play games with my mind, forcing me to relive my past mistakes and confront my deepest fears. He would show me visions of my wife and children in danger, and I would do anything to save them. I was consumed by fear and anxiety. I couldn't trust anyone, not even myself. I didn't know what was real and what wasn't. One night, the man in the suit told me that he had a new game for me to play. He said that if I won, he would let me go free. But if I lost, he would condemn me to an eternity of suffering in hell. I didn't know what to do. I was terrified, but I couldn't back out now. I agreed to play the game, hoping against hope that I could win. The game was simple, a game of cards. But as we played, I felt like I was being watched. I felt like the man in the suit was cheating, but I couldn't prove it. As the game went on, I started to feel like I was losing. I felt like I was being consumed by darkness, like I was losing myself to the devil's game. But then, something strange happened. I started to feel a sense of clarity, like a fog had lifted from my mind. I realized that the man in the suit had no power over me unless I let him. I decided to take a risk. I told him that I was done playing his game, that I was going to turn myself into the police and confess to everything. He laughed and told me that it was too late, that he had already won. But then, he started to fade away. His form became indistinct, like he was losing his grip on reality. And then, he was gone. I was left alone, wondering if it had all been a dream. But then, I heard a voice whisper in my ear. It was the voice of the man in the suit, and he was laughing. He told me that he wasn't the devil, but something far more sinister. He said that I was his pawn, and that he had no intention of letting me go. He told me that I was trapped in his game forever. I felt a surge of anger and defiance. I wasn't going to let him win. I was going to find a way to escape, no matter what it took. But I knew that it wasn't going to be easy. The man in the suit was still out there, and he was more powerful than I could have ever imagined. I was going to need help, but I didn't know who to turn to. I felt like I was in a dark hole with no way out. But I wasn't going to give up. I was going to keep fighting, no matter what the cost. I knew that I was in over my head. The man in the suit had me trapped in his game, and I didn't know how to escape. But I was determined to find a way out, no matter what it took. I started by doing some research. I read everything I could find about the man in the suit and his games. I talked to people who had survived encounters with him, hoping to learn from their experiences. And then, I met someone who changed everything. His name was Father James, and he was a priest who specialized in exorcisms and spiritual warfare. I didn't believe in any of that stuff, but I was willing to try anything. Father James listened to my story and nodded thoughtfully. He told me that he had encountered entities like the man in the suit before, and that there was a way to defeat them. But it wasn't going to be easy. He said that I had to confront the man in the suit head-on, to challenge him and his power. He said that I had to be willing to sacrifice everything, even my own life, to defeat him. I was scared, but I knew that I had to try. I couldn't live like this forever. I agreed to Father James' plan, and he started to prepare me for the battle to come. We spent weeks training, both physically and spiritually. Father James taught me how to protect myself against evil spirits and how to recognize their presence. He helped me build up my strength and courage, preparing me for the ultimate showdown. And then, the day came. Father James and I went to the abandoned factory where the man in the suit had set up his lair. I felt a sense of dread and fear, but I was determined to see this through to the end. The man in the suit was waiting for us. He looked amused, like he was enjoying the show. He challenged me to a game of his choosing, and I accepted. The game was simple, a test of willpower. We had to stare into each other's eyes and resist the temptation to blink. The first one to blink lost. I knew that I was in trouble. The man in the suit had supernatural powers, and I was just a mortal man. But I was determined to win, to prove that I wasn't his pawn anymore. As the game went on, I felt my eyes start to burn. I wanted to blink so badly, but I refused to give in. I focused on Father James, who was praying and chanting, and drew strength from his presence. And then, the man in the suit blinked. It was a small, almost imperceptible movement, but it was enough. I had won. The man in the suit laughed and clapped his hands. He said that I had proved myself, that I was no longer his pawn. He said that he would let me go, but that I had to remember the price of my freedom. And then, he was gone. I was left alone with Father James, feeling a sense of relief and disbelief. I had done it. I had defeated the man in the suit. But I knew that the battle wasn't over. I had to deal with the aftermath of my actions, to make amends for the things I had done. And I had to live with the knowledge that there were other entities like the man in the suit out there, waiting to prey on unsuspecting souls like me. But for now, I was free. And that was all that mattered. After my confrontation with the man in the suit, I was left to deal with the aftermath of my actions. I had killed 2 people and had become a pawn in the devil's game. I was consumed with guilt and shame, but I knew that I had to face the consequences of my choices. I turned myself into the police and confessed to everything. I was sentenced to life in prison, but I felt like it was a fair punishment for what I had done. I had hurt so many people, and I needed to make amends. But prison was different than I had imagined. It wasn't a place of darkness and despair, but rather a place of hope and redemption. I found solace in the daily routines and the interactions with other inmates. I started to read books and attend classes, learning new skills and discovering new passions. And then, something unexpected happened. My wife came to visit me in prison. I was surprised and scared, not knowing what to expect. She looked tired and worn, like she had been through a lot. She told me that she had left her lover after I had disappeared, and that she had been living alone with her children. She told me that she had forgiven me for what I had done, and that she still loved me. I was overwhelmed with emotion. I had thought that my life was over, that I had lost everything. But now, I had a chance to start over, to make things right with my family. I spent the rest of my time in prison working on myself, learning to forgive myself and others. I made amends with the families of the people I had hurt, and I found a new sense of purpose in life. And then, after 15 long years, I was released from prison. I was nervous and scared, not knowing what to expect from the outside world. But as I stepped outside the prison gates, I felt a sense of freedom and possibility. I knew that I had a long road ahead of me, but I was ready to face it with a new sense of purpose and hope. I reunited with my family and found a new job. I started volunteering at a local shelter, helping others who had fallen on hard times. I found joy in the simple things, like spending time with my children and watching the sunset. I knew that I could never forget the mistakes of my past, but I also knew that I didn't have to be defined by them. I could choose a new path, one of hope and redemption. And that's what I did. I made the most of my second chance, learning to appreciate every moment of life and the people around me. I knew that I had a long way to go, but I was ready to face the future with a renewed sense of purpose and determination.